Hello everybody, it's Killjoy here. Today's video is going to be a how-to on how to switch out the thumbsticks on your Switch's Joy-Cons. It's pretty common knowledge at this point that the thumbsticks on the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons are absolute garbage. They drift. It's all over Twitter. Like if you somehow don't have Joy-Cons that are drifting or something, you're apparently a miracle worker. I actually have two sets that I'm going to be working on today. So I have these red ones right here. These red ones are terrible, right? Like anytime I plug these up to my Switch or I connect them or whatever, it's just constantly, my character is constantly moving up. And then I actually also have a second set, right? So I'm doubly unlucky of these custom purple ones that I've modified. Sometimes when I tilt down on the left joystick on these, they just kind of don't work. So what I've done is I went ahead and I've ordered a little kit off of Amazon that has 4 replacement analog sticks in them. And I'm going to be switching those out today. I have taken apart the Joy-Cons probably, I think, about 3 times to modify them, just like these, right? So I've bought cases and I've modified them myself. So I am fairly confident in my ability to take these apart and do this. Fair warning, if you've never taken apart a controller before, this is going to be a really, really hard controller to start with. I've done a PlayStation controller before. I've done the Switch Pro controller. Those are pretty easy, right? The Joy-Cons, which you're actually going to see whenever I open this up, they have a lot of very, very tiny parts. It can be really confusing to put it back together if you're not careful with labeling and making sure you know where you sit everything. So if you're going to do this, this hopefully, at least hopefully, is a way to fix your analog sticks. But if you're going to do this, keep in mind, this is definitely not for the faint of heart, but it is possible. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Before I started taking these apart, I actually thought I might show you how exactly I'm 100% sure that these are drifting. So what I've done here is I've actually got the bad pair, the red Joy-Cons hooked up, and I've gone to System Settings, Controllers, and Sensors, and I'm going to go to Calibrate Stick. So I'm going to press down on my left stick here, and if you see, so what is supposed to happen is the little plus sign is supposed to come up whenever I'm not touching it, and if you see, it's moving. I am not touching this controller right now, and it is moving up. And whenever I'm in a game, basically, that just causes my character to constantly move up at random times. And as you can imagine, that makes these Joy-Cons pretty much useless, and it's very frustrating to try and do anything with them. So if you're, curious or for some reason not sure, like I said, you'll probably know this the first time you try to play a game with a set of drifting Joy-Cons. But this is a good way to kind of check and see if you've got some drift. And as you can see here, I definitely have some upward drift. But yeah, let's go ahead and start taking these bad boys apart. All right, everybody, so I've got my nice workspace cleared out here, and we are ready to take apart some Joy-Cons. So one of the things that I always recommend to people, anytime you're about to take, apart any type of electronic, but especially these Joy-Cons, since they have all kinds of really tiny pieces, right, is to start with some paper, just right here on your desk. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to make any of your screws or anything show up really, really, really good once you take them off, because the last thing you want to do is lose a screw while you're doing this, right? So we're going to go ahead, and I'm actually going to tape this down to my desk. That way, if I walk by the table or who knows, basically just the paper's not going to move, right? So we're going to go ahead and tape that down. So now we have our nice, super visible surface to go ahead and start taking these apart. Now, something else you are going to need is a little toolkit like this. So I actually bought this off of Amazon. I have used this quite a few times. Pretty much any time I've taken control or taken apart any type of electronics, I've used this. So it's a little kit. And what it's going to have inside it is just some little different screwdrivers. So they have some different little ends on them. I'm not sure if I can get that to focus good enough, but basically there's some different ends. So I've got a little bitty tiny Phillips. Now, most important of all, right, this kit has a tri-wing screwdriver inside it. So let's see, is this this is actually the Phillips. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, this is the tri-wing. So hopefully that'll focus. Basically, the difference between this and the Phillips is this just has 3 little divots on the end of it instead of 4. So the Nintendo Switch actually is going to use both the Phillips and the tri-wing. So if you do not have a tri-wing screwdriver, and unless you take apart electronics a lot, I really don't know why you would, you're going to have to order one of these, right? So make sure you have this before you go ahead and get started. This kit also has some, other helpful things in it. It's got some tweezers, which is going to be really helpful for when we get in there with all that ribbon cable. It's got some, it's got a little bit of everything in it, really. So it's just a nice kit to have. But, regardless, even if you only plan on doing this one time, you're going to need it for that tri-wing screwdriver. I will put a link down in the description for the product here on Amazon. just in case you want to buy the exact same kit I have. But okay, I will get this moved out and then we will start taking these bad boys apart. All right, it's go time. So we have the horrible red drifting Joy-Cons here. Now I actually have decided to, even though the left analog stick is the only one acting up, I am going to go ahead and switch out both. That's just because, you know, when you get a new controller and you compare like the sticks to a old controller, right? Like the old controller, the sticks loosen up over time. So I figure while I'm doing this, I might as well just go ahead and change both, right? That way they're both new sticks, both fresh. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and start with the, the left one. So that's the one that is drifting. Now, if you look here, the first step to opening this up is actually going to be to go ahead and get these 4 screws out. So you see 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I know you won't be able to see it on here because the camera isn't the greatest, but this is not, these aren't Phillips screws. These are tri-wing screws. So I'm going to go ahead and need to get that tri-wing screwdriver. So you can actually see here, it's got like the little Y shape on it. That's because it has the 3 little prongs, right? Now, word of advice, whenever you go to do this, these strip very easy. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply, you know, very firm pressure, but I'm going to go really slow. And it's not because I can't turn it faster. It's because I don't want to strip this. If I strip this, pretty much I'm screwed. No pun intended, but I'm screwed. You definitely don't have to do this, but another reason I like to put the paper down is I actually like to label my screws. I have the memory of a goldfish, right? And I do not want to forget what screws are what. So this is, I'm going to put 4 outer corners. I'm actually going to put the Y so that I remember it's tri-tip. Okay. So now that we have those 4 screws removed, we can actually go ahead. I'm going to take my little thumbnail and I'm going to slide it into that crack right there. Maybe. There we go. Wow, that thing really did not want to come off. I haven't opened these up before, so it was probably just stuck from all the years of use. So here we actually have our Joy-Con opened up. So we have this open, right? Now what you're looking at is just, you know, the front shell, back shell, nothing too crazy here. So the next step is actually going to be to pop this battery out. Now these batteries are stuck in. You actually probably heard that crack there. I didn't break anything. They're stuck down with double-sided tape. So there's the tape right here. So this is really a matter of personal preference. Personally, for me, whenever I'm taking stuff apart, the less that I disconnect, the better, right? So I'm not going to disconnect this battery. I'm just going to leave it kind of dangling there. If you wanted to disconnect it, all you need to do is just tug this wire here slightly this way, and it'll pop right out. Now, to get to the analog stick, we do have to remove this plastic piece right here. So in this plastic piece, there's actually 5 screws, and they are Phillips screws. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and number 5 is actually kind of sneakily hid up here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to take my time, grab my Phillips screwdriver, and we're going to go ahead and get that out of there. Now, I actually misspoke earlier, so it looks like there's only actually, the 2 screws right here are actually behind this plate, so you only need to do 3 of them to get this middle piece off. So once again, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to label right here. So what am I going to call this? I'm going to call it middle battery. And once again, that's just personal preference. There's nothing worse than going to put something together and you realize you have a few extra screws. It's like, oh my gosh, what have I forgotten? Okay, so here we go. We have that middle piece there. Now, this middle piece is connected by this one tiny little single-stranded ribbon cable. You can see it right here. Now, you can disconnect that if you want to, or you can leave it in. It's really easy either way. If you want to disconnect it, all you have to do is this little bitty white thing here. You're going to flip that up, and then it's just going to pop right out. So you really don't want to use a lot of pressure. Again, this is really, really easy to do. There is actually only 2 ribbon cables that we absolutely have to remove, though. And one of them is actually the minus button. So the minus button here is connected with this ribbon cable. So this is right here, It's just to the left of the joystick. And you can see it comes from up here, it goes all the way down over, and right here is where it's connected. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this, and all I've done is there's a little bitty gray like flap, and I've pretty much just flipped that down. So next, I'm going to take those handy dandy tweezers that I was talking about earlier, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to come in here, pull that out. So easy, right? It just slides out. Nothing too crazy. So next up, to actually remove our analog stick, we need to take out these two screws. So there's a screw here, and there's a screw right here. So I'm going to take, once again, my Phillips screwdriver. Okay, so there's that. And here's the other one. I'm going to label it really quick. So this is Joystick. I know you can't see that off camera there, but it's just a little circle like the other two. Okay, so last step before we really have this old joystick out is, once again, we're going to have to take out some ribbon cable. So right here, you can see this little flap. We are going to flip it up just like we did the other one. I'm actually going to use my tweezers here because I can't, or maybe I can do it with my finger now. Maybe. We'll see. See, that's the thing about these Joy-Cons. We have modded, I think, 3 different pairs of these, and they're really, to me, they're not that difficult, right? Because I've done it a few times, but I have tiny hands. I know my husband tried to do it, and he struggled just because he couldn't really get his fingers in there for that ribbon cable because all these pieces are so tiny. Okay, there we go. There we go. So this is actually the old joystick. So all I did there is I kind of pulled it out. You'll see there's this black plasticky ring. Honestly, that's just kind of annoying. You kind of have to just pull the old joystick out of that. And then here we go. Here's our old joystick. Kind of funny, huh? All right. So next up, obviously, we need our new joysticks, which are right here. Now, I just ordered a pack of 4 of these off of Amazon. I think I paid like $14.99 for 4, or it was like $8.99 or $7.99 for 2 of them. I just decided to go ahead and replace all my joysticks, because while I'm at it, why not do them all? But yeah, I will leave a link in the description below. That way, if you want to buy the exact same ones I've got here, you can. So we're going to go ahead, take out our new. I'll actually go ahead and put the old one way over here. That way I don't even, it'd be pretty bad if I accidentally put the old, or the old one back in. So here we go. We have our new joystick. So the first thing I'm going to do is just slide that right in there. Pretty easy stuff. Now, just to help kind of keep it still, I am going to go ahead and re-screw this one in before attaching the ribbon cable. That's just so there's less pieces moving around while I try to do this. All right, good deal. So as of right now, we haven't reconnected the ribbon cable, but I do have the new joystick in. So you can actually see that there. It actually feels pretty good. So hopefully this works great, I'd hate to do all this for it not to work. Okay, now next up, and this is probably one of the trickier parts, right, is we have to reattach that ribbon cable. So this new one, here's the new ribbon cable right here, right? And we have to get that back into this little gray slot. So I'm going to go ahead, use my tweezers here. And we're good. So I've got the ribbon cable slid back under the little gray piece, and I'm going to push that black piece back down. So that black piece, what it does is it just locks it in place. Next up, we need to reconnect the minus sign ribbon cable. So once again, flip up that little piece, use my tweezers here. So both of our ribbon cables are now reattached. So we have this ribbon cable slid back in here, and we have our new joystick ribbon cable slid back in. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this back together. All we have to do here is just slide that back there. Pretty much just sit it back on the top. There is a little spring right here that you need to make sure it sits on that little lever. All right. So now we need to reapply our 3 screws. Okay, so flip our battery back up and it'll stick right back to that old tape. No big deal there. Then we're just going to take this, slide it back on, right? And we have our 4 screws for the outside. Now remember, this is not Phillips. These are tri-wing. So I'm going to grab my tri-wing screwdriver and we are going to work on putting that back in there. Okay, so that's it. We have our 4 outer screws here. We are getting power whenever we push a button on the Joy-Con. New joystick feels nice. Feels pretty good. So let's go ahead. That is the end of the tutorial for the left Joy-Con, but I am going to do both. So here in a second, I'm going to take a quick break and then I'm going to hop back in with the right one. Alright everyone, I am back from my quick break and here I have the remaining right Joy-Con. Now, whenever we take this apart, you're going to notice there are a lot of parts that are very similar to the left one. However, there will be a few noticeable differences just because the right Joy-Con does have the IR sensor in it. And that means it has a couple extra parts. It's nothing too crazy, but it is going to look slightly different. So please don't let that intimidate you. So similar to the left Joy-Con, right? We are going to go ahead and start by removing these 4 screws. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And just like the other one, they are tri-wing. So we need that little 3-prong tip screwdriver. So I'm going to go ahead, take my time here and unscrew these. Four. Okay, so just like the last one, we have our 4 screws out. So the next part is just to pop it open, which if we know anything from the last one, sometimes that's not always the easiest to do. So I'm going to slide my thumbnail in there. Oh, this one's easier. There we go. So, okay, we've got it open. So you can actually see the extra pieces here. So this is the IR sensor right here. So yes, it does look similar, but it does have a few extra pieces. If any of you ever decide to like mod your own Joy-Cons in the future, you'll become very familiar with all these pieces because you'll actually have to take all these little bits out and then add them into the new shell. But we're not going to do that in this video. So we're going to go ahead and once again, pop the battery up. You hear the crack sound, but that's just the double-sided tape. That's just where it's coming loose. So on this one, we don't have the screws in the middle like the left Joy-Con, but we do have, and these are Phillips screws once you get on the inside, but we have a screw down here, and then we have 2 more, so there's one here and one right here. So we're going to go ahead, take our time, and undo these. All right. So right here, this is one thing that's a little bit different from the left Joy-Con. We are going to have to, if you see there's actually like a little chip here, and what that is I believe that's for the IR sensor. So all we're going to do, this is really easy. Literally just slide it out, right? Slide it up, out, and we're just going to kind of let it stick up there. Okay, so I'm going to pull that cover off just like we did on the first one. This one is a little bit tighter just because this ribbon cable here is connected to the bumper. So that little ribbon cable is right here. That's why this one won't open up as much. But now we are all the way down already to our joystick. So there are 2 screws just like the last one. So right here and here. I'm going to go ahead and remove those. Okay, and just like that last one, we are going to have to remove the old ribbon cable so that right here is where the ribbon cable is attached. And we are just going to flip up that little switch once again. I think this was actually easier to do with my finger last time. So there we go. I've just flipped up the little black piece that's there. And then, boom, pulled it out. Now once again, these Joy-Cons do have that annoying black plastic ring. So sometimes these can be a little hard. Oh, I'm actually going to try my best not to pull that out. Sometimes it can be a little hard to get these out. There we go. Boom, done. There's the old one. I'm going to sit it over here so we don't get it mixed up. And here is another replacement stick. So once again, we are going to just stick that old stick through this black ring here, put it right back where the old one came from. So I'm going to take the old ribbon cable. This would be very difficult to do without tweezers. And I'm going to go ahead and slide that in. And then this little black piece, push it back down. And that just locks it. So I know you might not be able to see the actual little individual piece on here, but whenever you're opening it up, you will see that little black flap. And whenever you push it down, you'll feel it actually lock. So that's how you'll know that it's in place. All right, so there is the second joystick. So next up, we just have to pretty much redo everything that we took out here. So I'm going to reattach that right here. It's pretty easy. There's just a little spring and there's a little bitty spot that it sits on. Like, it's not hard. There we go. So we have our old bumper back in there and we have the plastic battery case. So remember, this one only has 3 screws. So we're going to take our 3 little golden screws from earlier. And there are 2 up here by the bumper, and there's 1 down here near the IR sensor. So we're going to screw those back in. Okay, so we're actually almost done. So just like how we took it out earlier, we are going to take this little IR sensor piece, slide it right in there. Make sure your cable is in the right place. There we go. So it's tucked right in there really nicely. Then we're going to take our battery, stick it back onto the double-sided tape. All right. We're almost done. So then we are just going to take the 2 pieces, slide them back together. Boom. All that's left now are the 4 outer screws. Okay. So we still have power, which, there really shouldn't be any issues with that unless you disconnected your battery. But yeah, that's a good way to make sure your stuff's still working. So we both have 2 new joysticks, and honestly, these feel great. These feel great. So now for the moment of truth, we are going to see if they work. So I'm actually just going to straight up grab my switch here, right? Grab it off the dock, slide this on. We're going to take these bad boys for a spin. All right, let's see. Oh, look at that, they work. So just to show you here, so here I am using the right joystick. Hopefully you can see that. But there we go, it's working. And the left joystick, which is also working. Now let's go down here. And actually, you know what? I'm going to put this on the computer just to see if we have any drift like we did before. But yeah, I'll be back in just a second. Okay, everyone, it's time for the moment of truth. So I have actually gone ahead and I've switched out the analog sticks now. So now we're going to see if it fixed my problem. So if you remember from the first part of the video, whenever you do this with a set of drifting Joy-Cons, you're going to see the little, the little arrow or whatever move. So hopefully I don't get any of that movement now since these are new. But yeah, here we go, moment of truth. So I've got the red Joy-Cons here, And oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So, remember earlier it kept moving up like this. So I'll go ahead and move it. So it actually kept looking like this, right? It kept drifting upward even when I wasn't touching it. But now it is just sitting there nice and perfect. So yay, that means it worked, which is awesome. So this project, it cost me about $15 to buy all the new analog sticks. Definitely cheaper than buying 2 new sets of Joy-Cons, right? So yeah, if you have this issue with your controllers, I would highly recommend giving it a go. You know, worst case scenario, you tear up your Joy-Cons or whatever. It's better than just, not having a Joy-Con at all. Or I think it's worth it price-wise at least, just to try and save some money to try and fix it yourself. And yeah, clearly, this was a success. So thank you everybody for watching, and stay tuned for more. And that is it for this video. I hope you like what you see, and if you want to, maybe hit that subscribe button or even check me out on one of my other platforms. Hope to see you again soon.